everybody, welcome to the In Between Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about anything and everything. And in today's episode, we will be discussing The Perfect Design, a manga created by my friend Johny. So, Johny, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm doing just fine.
Awesome. It's good to have you here. Last time you were here, we discussed Mortal Kombat.
Right.
So, what do
Yeah,
you
that
feel
was a
about
lot
Mortal
of fun.
Kombat after a few months after it came out?
Well, I haven't seen it after a few months. I think I saw it a day after I saw it originally, but other
Yeah.
than that, I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm, my opinion pretty much still stands. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So I've known you for a couple years now, and you've always surprised me with all your tus gustos because you're one of those individuals who have a lot of gustos in a whole bunch of different things, video games, books. We do like a lot of the same books, especially Tolkien. I think we have to do a podcast on Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and The
I have to
Hobbit.
finish. I have to finish Lord of the Rings first.
Yeah, we really do. We really do, and I know you're a big fan of Game of Thrones as well.
Yeah, I love Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and but a lot of thing something maybe the viewers don't know about you is that you are an artist, my friend, and you've created your own manga, which is titled The Perfect Design, and on today's podcast we will be talking about all that. So I'm super excited to talk about your work, talk about your baby, talk about what inspired you, and all about all those things. So here we go.
Yes.
So when did you first start drawing?
So from what I've been told, by my mom and my sister, I've been drawing pretty much all my life. Even in kindergarten, I would always have a whole bunch of scribbles everywhere.
Yeah.
But the first memories I have of drawing is in the second grade. In my elementary school, every week, I think there would be one day when it was art class, and
Hmm.
we would, do molds with clay. We would do paintings. We would do sketches. So we would just mess around a lot with art. And yeah, those are my first experiences with art.
Since second grade. Yeah, I remember those classes too. I remember doing the clay molds. Mine would always break because I never got to do it right. You there was a technique you had to do. I remember you had to get it wet a certain way, and
Right.
otherwise it would
And then
crack.
after that, you have to like hatch it a little bit or something like
Yeah.
that.
No, I could never get that right. So, um, so who was the first character you ever created personally and for the perfect design?
So actually, the first character I created was my character Ashra, and this is a very early drawing. Um, but she's actually the main character of Perfect Designs, and I created her in the second grade. Um, she was pretty much originally like kind of a big knockoff off of Katana from Mortal Kombat.
I can see it.
And she even had Katana's war fans, and sometimes she would rock Melina's size. And yeah, just um from obviously now she's I don't think she's derivative at all from Katana now.
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely back then she was just a Katana clone.
No, and I could see with the face mask, the face mask, the
Mhm.
influence, and I think
Yeah,
that
she's also an assassin just like Katana.
nice. I mean, especially as a fellow creator as you, I feel that a lot of our characters, especially like in our writing, it comes to from a personal place. So whatever impacts you, that's where your characters come from or your creations come from.
Right,
So
right.
yeah. So the second grade, you come up with this character that now is the main character for your manga, PD, right? The perfect design. So when did you know you wanted to write a manga?
So personally, I knew I wanted to write and illustrate around the time I was in sixth grade. By seventh grade, I was already thinking about the story at large.
Yeah.
And uh, my definitely a lot of my art style and how I draw now started really kicking into development when I was in high school. In gosh, in freshman year. There you go.
Freshman year.
In freshman year, that's when I started getting a lot of my artistic skills, I would say. But yeah, it's been a journey. I've been knowing that I wanted to write manga and illustrate for a very long time.
So, if you could go back in time and tell little Johnny to pay attention to manga books, which ones would you be like? Read more of this.
Um, I'm not sure because how I've gone is really, I mean, I've always been a Dragon Ball fan,
Mm-hmm.
and even in middle school, I was already reading the manga,
Mm-hmm.
and I read the manga twice in middle school, and since then, I've read it so many other times, and I even have the whole thing now. But yeah, so I guess just reading a lot of Dragon Ball, reading Bleach, Inuyasha, all those series, they really just sparked something in me, and I was just like, I want to do this. I want to be a creator as well in this medium.
Would you consider this your greatest inspiration that helped you create your own story?
Um, there's a lot of inspirations that's helped me, but the biggest two have to be Avatar: The Last Airbender and Dragon Ball.
Avatar is so good.
Yeah.
So you created this character in the second grade, right?
Yes.
Let, tell me the name again. I don't want to murder the
Yeah. So
pronunciation.
her name is Ashra.
Ashra.
Yeah, now it's spelled different. Uh, there's a lot less letters, but it's pretty much the same name. Uh, yeah, so this image right here is an even earlier image of the one you saw before, but they're counterparts because the other one said New Ashra, and pretty much that was the first big leap in my art style change. And to show that, I'm guessing I'm so glad that I did this as, I don't know, fourth grader or fifth
Mm-hmm.
grader, because I'm pretty much letting myself know, or I'm comparing my old art style with what I'm going with now. So if you can see on the left, that is how my characters used to look when I first started creating characters,
Mm-hmm.
and when I first created Ashra, and it's just a side by side comparison um, of my new art style at the time.
Awesome. So, um, and then we can go to this one. What about this one?
So this one, I believe, is an even older drawing in Ashura, possibly the oldest that I have. And from what this looks like, I mean, this has to be second grade material when I did this, because it looks it it looks a mess, but but yeah, this is definitely not when I created her. I don't think it is, but yeah, this is the earliest work I have of Ashra.
And what about this
And
one?
yeah, so this one is continuing on the evolution of the last art style,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say this is around fifth or sixth grade. Um, yeah, I was you can see a lot of katana, a lot of katana similarities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I even now I always doodle characters on a whole bunch of pages, or some of my characters I've created while I was doing homework, and I just drew it on my homework, and I was like, eh. So yeah, uh, yeah, that's just another one. So this
Uh-huh.
is seventh or eighth grade, I would say, and this is one of the bigger leaps of my art style as a whole, and it's definitely getting closer to what I have now, but we're still a lot of long way to go. And then the next image is actually, yeah, so this image I
Wow.
drew of Ashra at the beginning of the year. So the art style inside of the manga itself won't be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might be later on,
Yeah.
but this was just me experimenting with art style,
What do you
and I
call this art
really,
style? If you don't mind me asking.
what was that?
What do you call this art style? If you don't mind me asking.
Uh, is definitely more anime.
Or anime? Okay.
It's yeah, it's like anime art style. My art style as a whole is leaning more towards traditional Japanese anime more than American cartoons.
Wow. And I you can definitely see the difference in the leap and the growth in you as an artist. What helped you over the years? How did you become better? What inspired you? Your illustrations to just get better at drawing, and because it's I try to draw and I can doodle some things, but I mean to get to this level, it's I know it's a lot of dedication, but what motivated you to?
Right. Honestly, what motivated me was trying to create my story. Because again, since middle school, I've known I wanted to do this, um, but I would draw and just keep consistently drawing
Mm-hmm.
uh, Ashra. And during middle school, I would also create. While I was thinking of the story, I started creating just a whole bunch of new characters that you'll see. I think one other one in later in the presentation, but I created a whole bunch of other characters, and I would think of their personality, think of their story, and I would just draw them and draw them and draw them, and um, usually I'd get inspired by a show. So like up until starting middle school up until now, I started drawing their eyes a certain way, where their pupils like it'll have a highlight, and then their pupil will be kind of like a semicircle,
Mm-hmm.
and that I've had pretty much I got inspired because I was drawing eyes at the moment and they never looked right.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment in middle school, Avatar: The Last Airbender was airing, and me and my brother were watching it like religiously at that point because it was the show. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna take their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use her eyes, and it's just stuck with me from then. So it's just little things like that where I'll get some inspired by a piece of media that I'm watching or reading, and then I'll draw it. And that's kind of how I've been able to evolve over the years. The one that you just saw, that was inspired because I've been really into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recently,
Okay.
and their art style I think is beautiful now. But when I started watching it and reading it, I thought it was really hideous. I was like, oh, this is very strange. This is very. They look very interesting, but ugly, but beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was leaning more on that experimental art piece was leaning more on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
So
Uh,
let me ask you this question off script. When you draw, where do you start first? You start in the eyes, the
I always start
face.
with the. I also always start with the head and the
Mm-hmm.
facial structure. So it's usually the head, the ears, the nose, the eyes, the mouth, and then everything else. if Yeah, generally with the head. Sometimes I do have to make what's it called? Construction art, and
Mm-hmm.
pretty much that's like drawing a circle and then lines to see where exactly I like the position I want my character to be in.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll start with that, but typically, especially with this one, I'm pretty sure I just started with the head and kept going.
What can you tell me about this image?
So, though I should probably not be revealing anything, this is the first page of the Perfect Designs,
Ooh.
and I final drafted this image. Yeah, I final drafted this image. I think 3 years ago. So it's taken. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's taken me a while to almost be complete with this. Yeah, there's kind of no excuse for that. I've had plenty of time. I've just been super bad at actually producing work.
I actually
But yeah,
remember you drawing this, and I remember you carrying your papers everywhere, and wherever chance you got to have a hard surface to draw on, you would start drawing.
right.
Like 3 years
Yeah,
ago. And I remember I was
Yeah.
asking you, "Can I ink? Can I ink your drawings?" You were like, "No, you're gonna mess them up," because it's just so,
Yeah.
the detail you put in your work is
Mhm.
amazing to me. You know, you always see creators. What about this one? This one is it's awesome. This part right
Yeah,
here.
so this is a page from the chapter I'm inking now,
Hmm.
and it's not finished. I think there's just the panel, the fourth panel that you see where she's like pushing herself off the ground. That panel isn't completed.
Yeah.
Uh, but this piece, I don't know. I just wanted to give a big sense of motion, and I wanted things to be moving and popping out of the page. And
Right. Right.
I didn't want things to be static, especially for the battle scenes. I never want the same pose or the same position, the same kind of just like static image pretty much. Because when you're dealing with the medium of comics and manga, you always want to pretty much have the reader's eyes flow across the page in a natural way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that transition brings me to the next question. Flowing on the page. Do you ever plan on having it animated or into motion picture?
So when the day comes that my franchise has grown, God willing, I would absolutely love to have uh, this be animated. Under one condition, though, I
Mm-hmm.
would, and maybe I'm like really, I don't know, uptight about it, but if it ever gets animated, I have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be like supervising, and I'm an animator too, so
Mm-hmm.
I know how difficult it is. I know the time crunch is really bad, and I understand that. But for me, I would absolutely need my series to look as best as it possibly can. And there's one I won't greenlight anything, and I won't let anything be animated until one specific character who doesn't come out until a lot later in the story. But I need to see some animation tests of that character because if they're not animated correctly, I don't want the
You just don't
show.
want it at all.
I don't want it at all.
What about this image?
Okay, so that image comes in the fourth chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much I just wanted to have big, a big sense of scope. Definitely in the later chapters, you'll see while you're reading that there's a lot more environments, and that's because I've been trying my hardest to start uh, to really get good at creating the environments and drawing them out and making them look good. So yeah, this is an area in the world called the Great Chasm,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much all those trees are supposed to look as if they're petrified, and they're actually
Mm.
supposed to look like muscle.
Whoa. Okay. 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 I see that, and I totally get what you mean when you say that you're working on uh, the environment on adding more stuff to the environment to the drawings to
Right.
make it more intricate and stuff. So with that being said, who are your favorite characters and what's the inspiration behind them?
So honestly, I don't really have a favorite character because I just hold all of them so dear to my heart. And I mean, especially the main characters of the series, they're just I don't know, they feel real to me. They are real to me.
Yeah.
I, so I'm but from the ones that we're going to show today, Astra, she came from Katana.
Mm-hmm.
She was pretty much a Katana clone. And one of my other characters, which if you show, is the boy with the blue hair.
Oh,
Uh,
which one was that?
his name is, I think it's image, like one of the first images.
Let me go back. Sorry, guys, technical difficulties here. Nope. There we go.
There you go. Yeah. So his name is Kude, and he was pretty much born out of my love for the Fire Emblem series, and I wanted to create a character who was kind of as calm and really as peaceful, but not afraid to get in a fight.
Yeah.
Uh, and that rem- or that characterization I got from two characters in Fire Emblem, and one of them is Azura from Fire Emblem Fates, and then the other one, I think his name is Shigure. I haven't played Fire Emblem Fates in a long time, but he's also from that game.
Okay, okay, okay.
But yeah,
Awesome, man. I mean, you're definitely creating a big world here, and so it really it really I want to say shocks me, but it just it's kind of weird that you don't have a favorite character of all the characters you've created. I know and as a creator, you I mean, I'll say this as an author, I love all my characters, but there's always the characters that I write about that I
right.
wish them I put everything in the world for them, more than other characters that you have to be a
Oh,
little
right, right.
selfish about with like, oh,
I
I'm
mean,
not gonna be so good
for
about this
me at
character.
least, there's more characters that I don't like than the
Hmm.
ones that I do like.
Interesting.
But the ones that I don't like, it's more that I love to hate them
Uh
because
huh.
I know the actions that they're taking and I know what they're gonna do later on in the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I love all my babies.
That's awesome. No, dude. I mean, do you ever forget their names? I mean, I exactly don't know how many characters you've created, but is there a time you just forget to name them and then you forget? You know.
There's two characters that
Uh,
have similar names, and I shouldn't have done that, but it's too late now, and I don't want to, and I don't want to rename them because there's meanings to most of the names I create. I have a little bit of meaning to them,
yeah.
either if it's something as simple as they're like a name pun,
Mm.
or something that like, oh, there's a certain feature about them, and their name reflects that.
Right. 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 So there's when people talk about especially with comic books, like Marvel, DC, usually have a writer and then the illustrator, but rarely do you see someone like yourself who illustrates and writes the story. Usually, someone comes up with a story and then someone illustrates it. But here we have you. You've come up with this whole world, the story, and my question is, did anyone help you write some of the story?
So I've kind of, for better or for worse, followed the footsteps of a Japanese mangaka because they're kind of like the only ones who are there. It's usually, especially, let's, for example, Akira
Mm-hmm.
Toriyama, it was just him and
Yeah.
his editor who would like ink Goku's hair.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it was just them two. And for me, it's a very similar situation where it's just me, and sometimes I'll have a friend or two help me out with inking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say around 90% of the story, and or not 90, 95, there you go. 95% of the stories and scenarios that I have written are completely from me. The other 5% is from my friends who have suggested one or two things that shouldn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
or like like a specific thing to like elevate someone's like hateability. Um, but other than that, it's really been me. It just Yeah, it's really been me with the storytelling, and for the most part with the inking as well. The first four chapters I
Yeah.
pretty much did on my own, and the fifth one I'm getting a lot of help from my friend. So yeah,
So, how important is inking for you?
inking is very important to me. It's possibly more important to me than actually drawing the
Wow.
piece because when you're drawing it, you can make mistakes. You can, do whatever you want. You can make it look dirty. You can, it's yours. It's yours to create. But when you're inking it, you're finalizing what you've done,
Mm-hmm.
and every move matters. Every stroke of the pen matters. Every stipple or hatching or cross hatching, even the type of pen that you use, the size of the pen,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely everything matters when it comes to inking, and it's a lot more tedious than drawing because you're kind of just like playing a real difficult version of connect the dots, but
That's a fun
but
way to put it, but it's not.
yeah, but yeah, other than that, yeah, inking's very important to the process. It might be the most important part.
Do you have an ending in mind for your story? Do you
Yeah,
see an
I do.
end to it?
in in fact, I have three endings for three separate story
Oh
arcs
wow.
because this this uh this is gonna be for the long term. So please stick around and read my work and be patient with me.
Well, if
But
you send
yeah,
us links to all your stuff, do you have any stuff set up? We'll
at the
put up.
moment, no.
Okay.
But um, things will start releasing soon. I won't say how soon because I don't know myself,
Yeah.
but definitely look forward to 2022.
For sure, you got my word that in this podcast will help you spread the word of your work. We love doing that in this podcast to share other people's work, and we want to read it already. I've seen glimpses of it. I know a little bit about the story where you're heading it, but I mean that was so far back when you
Mm-hmm.
started, so I don't know. I don't know where you're at now, but I'm
Right.
intrigued. I've always told you I'm a big fan of your work, especially your drawings. So um, the fact that you have three endings in mind that
Yeah.
tells me so much how much you've gone so far and done and thought ahead.
Right.
So
Right.
that is pretty cool. Why the setting? Why this setting?
So the setting of the story, the continent of Thera, and it's somewhere around the age of 5,000. I know I have it documented somewhere, like the exact year that the story takes place, but it's in the year 5,000, and um, this world has a lot of different biomes, or just this continent, a lot of different biomes, and nature is abundant here. Um, the only thing is that I thought it was interesting is that in my story, there's still rudimentary practices that remain, such as horse riding,
Mm-hmm.
even though the technology is pretty advanced in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just a big blend of old and new. Yeah, for example, so this is a page from chapter 5. This is a page from chapter 5, and yeah, this is one of the characters that I did not expect to be popping up. I kind of forgot I sent this, but yeah, he was so much fun to draw. But yeah, the whenever it's funny too because whenever some practice of old is still being done, like horse riding, there's
Mm-hmm.
always a new element to it. So in
Mm-hmm.
my world, horses are artificially enhanced to be even faster than they
That's
would be
crazy.
normally. So, like, going across the entire continent would really only take you less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
Or, yeah, less than 2 weeks. And it's a pretty big continent, too. Um, but yeah, going from one kingdom to another only takes a couple days, not even a week.
That's crazy that you made the horses that way, and
Yeah.
and and I like that you kept the traditional thing of the horse, right? Because you could have made a flying car or a spaceship or something, but the fact that you
Right.
enhanced the horse, but the horse still
Right.
holds so much meaning. That's pretty awesome. And what about this picture here?
So that is one of the big locations of the volume, and this is oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart, but it's the Pacifica's Royal Library. Pacifica is one of the five kingdoms that's inside of Thera.
Awesome. That's crazy, man. You created all these. Yo ya me hubiera enchivolado con tantos nombres. Like all the names. Like I already
Mhm.
would have forgotten or like when I write, I keep my stuff simple. Like one of the stories that I'm writing right now, um, his name is Flynn, and he doesn't even have a last name. He's just
Oh.
Flynn. But I keep my stuff simple because I have such a chicken brain. I forget details, and I said I'll share this. It was kind of embarrassing, but I had some I had some inconsistency with my story, which is so dumb.
Uh-huh.
I put my character that he lived in the 44th floor, and then in chapter 2, I said, oh, he lives in the 13th floor, and see that's
Oh
how
no.
bad I am with stuff with like little details like that.
He
So I
couldn't
mean,
pay rent, so he had to move down.
he had to move down, yeah, and so I mean, dude, props to you for having that mind. You can go far and beyond. So, how has your art evolved during the process of writing and illustrating the perfect
So
designs?
I've officially been writing and illustrating this first volume for the last 3 years, which It's pretty embarrassing, but there has been a lot of progress just within those 3 years, and it definitely reflects from how you see in chapter one, and that's a page of chapter two. Um, how you see the start of chapter one, which we've already seen the first page of chapter one, and
Mm-hmm.
then going to the end of the volume, it's my art style has definitely evolved. Obviously, I didn't switch into anything unrecognizable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't go with the experimental art style within this first volume. Um, I'll get there eventually, but for this first volume, I didn't want to do that because it would just be jarring, and it would kind of be like, it would kind of look like there was different artists
Mm-hmm.
working on it when really it was just me. But it is interesting to see that, the first chapter was made 3 years ago, so I love to see it because it's kind of like a time capsule.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so this whole volume for me is just one big time capsule
That's
of
great.
art.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, no, you never forget your first drawing, especially on paper, and then you go back and see where you are now.
Mhm.
And I know you're very open about your Christian faith, and do you draw inspiration from your faith?
Yes, I definitely do. Give me a moment. I have it. Okay. So, yes, I definitely do. I would say that I draw inspiration from my faith. Two of the main big themes of my story is faith and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And those two are really big in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to create a sermon out of my series. I'm not trying to like, you know, be pushy or like preachy or anything. My goal is just to share a wonderful and compelling story that happens to have themes and ideas
Mm-hmm.
that are from the Bible.
Awesome. What about this? How do you?
So that image is an image from chapter 3. It's a page from chapter 3, and what you see on the left is the one of the beings of my series that is called a shadow person,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much it's the equivalent of a demon.
Mm.
In my series, shadow people can morph their bodies, so they're shapeshifters, and they'll typically morph into whoever they're fighting, like their body structure.
Awesome. What about this one? Is this still a shadow
Yes.
person?
Yeah, so this is still a shadow person, and this is one of the abilities that they can also do is they can fire energy from their face.
Ooh,
So what
interesting.
happens is their face will kind of tear open, kind of like how film. It was inspired by b- film burning, and you
Mm.
know how
Mm-hmm.
in old films, like you can see like,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
So that was kind of the idea. Was their eyes open, and then it just becomes their face, and yeah.
So you mentioned that you draw from some of your you draw some inspiration from your faith, and so how religiously dense is the continent of Thera, and how heavy your characters believe in their faith.
Yeah, so there are many religions inside of the five kingdoms of Thera that live in Thera, and much like in the real world, it's very there's very different ideologies and very different religions. Some in my world are based off of gods that control nature. Some of them are based off of malevolent, unworldly beings that exist solely to create chaos. And one of the main characters of my five main, because the cast is five,
Mm-hmm.
main cast is five characters, and one of them is actually deeply devoted to the faith of the Glorious One, which in my world is the equivalent of Jehovah. Um,
Okay.
so I don't turn her into a stereotype. I'm trying not to.
That's crazy that you've done that, which kind of simulates, the world that we live in. And so, and I give you props because some people like to go away from their beliefs in their art, but I think it's something very honest when artists can actually integrate their faith or their beliefs in their art, which is it's part of them as well, and not
Right.
put two things separate. Which I think
Right.
that I
And the main two themes of trust and faith. I mean, those two themes are really universal in many stories
mhm.
and in many aspects of our life, even. So I thought that those two themes were the best, really, to lean in on when it comes to this series, at least for the first arc,
Yeah,
because
for the first arc.
in the second and in the third arc, I mean, that's way then, but for the first arc, is definitely trust and faith.
Nice. So as we're moving close to ending this conversation, Johnny, what's your favorite manga or anime?
My favorite manga, it's the original 42 volumes of Dragon Ball, Pretty Guardian, Sailor Moon, and Death Note.
Wow, which one do you recommend anyone who's never probably, because there's a lot of people here and maybe not a lot of them
uh
have done anime or manga. Which where
yeah,
would you
so
tell them to start?
I think that the one of the most accessible series to really get into anime, just to see how ridiculous it can get, but also how intense and really interesting it can get, is with Death Note.
Death Note.
Because um, it's a lot more. I think it came out in 2004 through 2006, and the
Mm-hmm.
anime came out, I think, in 2006. I recommend watching the anime. It's on Netflix right now, I think. Hashtag not sponsed, but but yeah, it's only 36 episodes. I think it's very short, but
Okay.
it's really good. I would recommend Dragon Ball, but it's really long, and
It's really long.
especially the anime. It's, I think, 350 plus episodes.
Yeah.
Um, and Sailor Moon, I would also recommend for anyone, really, because there's a lot of themes um, of love and friendship, and those are really good universal themes as well. And I think that um, the show and the manga are really good at kind of creating a perspective that is not really seen
Mm-hmm.
these days. Interestingly enough, I know I'm going on a tangent, but
You good? You good?
interestingly enough, uh, the female perspective was already done in Japan so long ago, and Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon is
Mm-hmm.
one of those stories with the female perspective, because for all intents and purposes, it's a girl anime,
Mm-hmm.
but I really think that the themes of love and friendship are just so strong that they're universal, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, who's watching it,
Mm-hmm.
or because, I just think it's really good. So, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, I think Sailor Moon Crystal is on Netflix right now. It's pretty short as well, and the movies that came out this year are also on Netflix.
It's
So I would
cool.
recommend that too.
There's a
If
whole fever of anime now. It seems to like everyone that I approach or talk to or friend that I have, everyone's into or getting into anime, which I think is pretty awesome. As a kid, you know what I remember watching Sailor Moon, but I don't remember getting into it. I don't know. Not that I didn't like it. It's just that where I was growing up in El Salvador, it wasn't so accessible as here, and so
ah
I remember them airing Sailor Moon, but not as prominent. And then which it was what would always be airing was Dragon Ball Z, and so
yeah,
that's why I know more about Dragon Ball Z than Sailor Moon. But you know, I need to find the whole series and watch it again, and yeah, because I like Sailor Moon, but I mean I grew up with Dragon Ball Z, and I think that's something that a lot. I think everyone else is more knows Dragon Ball Z a lot more, especially now because of the
right,
movies. It's so mainstream
yeah,
now. It's super
yeah,
mainstream.
definitely,
I think you probably remember Endgame. I mean Infinity War. I mean like what if they had a Goku? What if remember? And I remember all the memes with Goku fighting
yeah,
Thanos. I thought that was pretty cool. And I like that more people are aware of this art. Um, I do
yeah,
remember
definitely.
I do remember classmates getting bullied in high school or middle school for liking anime because
Yeah,
it wasn't so
in
mainstream.
middle school, you were kind of seen as the odd one out if
Yeah.
you liked anime, which is really weird because, I mean, I kind of grew up with anime, and The only shows that I really watched on like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon was Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's other good shows now.
Mm-hmm.
I think like Adventure Time and regular show is pretty good now, but when I was growing up, the only thing that was like really good was anime. Like
Yeah.
Bleach was still going on, Inuyasha was still going on, Dragon Ball was always rerunning on Cartoon Network. Like they were just the most interesting because, and I think that has to do with the format of anime because
Mm-hmm.
most battle shonen manga, which is the genre I think that I'm writing under,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's not sitcom-y.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do an episodic show where you know a problem will happen and then it'll be solved by the end of the episode and no one really changes.
Exactly.
uh, Anime is serialized,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just one huge story from beginning to end, and I think a lot of people more gravitate towards that, especially in today's age
Mm-hmm.
when it's this whole binge culture and this whole like I want it now, I need
Mm-hmm.
it now. Um, Anime I think is a lot better suited for that because it's just one huge story instead of the same thing over and over again.
Right. I I think that even now, anime is more open to a lot of stuff that maybe in American TV would be taboo, right? They're a lot
Yeah,
more
I would.
open about the violence or the blood or the gory
Right.
stuff.
I would
Um,
definitely think that's true.
and I think I don't know if you know, there's a show in DC Network. It's called Young Justice. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And it's kind of
Young
that,
Justice.
yeah. And it's kind of
Yeah.
the same way as you're describing anime. It's something serialized. It's not like a sitcom thing where the problem ends.
Mhm.
Every season has a big overall problem,
Right.
and the story drives the way. And I did notice that a lot of their concept of art, it looks like anime, and so I think DC did pretty
Yeah.
good with
I
that.
think definitely with the
Yeah.
animated DCU, I think
Hmm.
it's called like
Yeah.
DCAU or something like that. They even since when Teen Titans was airing
Oh yeah.
back way back when I was a kid.
Before they made them to little kids.
Yeah, and when the original Teen
The
Titans
original Teen
series,
Titans. Yeah.
it was heavily inspired by anime,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I think that's something that's still in the DCAU.
Yeah. And I think
So,
it's pretty cool where Marvel loses to DC because of
yeah.
that. Because they if you look at X-Men or the other stuff that they got
Mhm.
animated, it's not as good as DC. And I think it's because they take their influence from anime, which
Mhm.
I think is pretty awesome. And brings me to this because people would watch that but would not watch anime back in my day. And it's like it's not the same thing, but it's like look at it. You would like
Mhm.
anime if you paid attention. You don't think it's weird.
Yeah, because I feel like people, I don't know, it's very strange because people are like, oh yeah, I don't like anime because I don't like the way it looks or I don't like the way characters act or anything, but then they've never seen an anime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot that has to do with that is just as the popularity of um not not mainstream anime, like smaller anime where
Mm-hmm.
it's like about high school or about like volleyball, which sports anime, uh, they've grown in huge popularity, and I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen one, so I can't really talk on it. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seen a few clips, and their animation is gorgeous. But I think people see things like the weird side of like the American fan base for
Mm-hmm.
anime, and they're just kind of put off by that, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, and they're like into weird stuff. I don't want to, I don't want to be associated with that. I don't want to watch it, so I hate anime. And
Yeah, yeah. So did talking about this? Did it ever feel weird you doing the manga? Knowing that people look at it this way.
honestly, no, I've never. I've only thought about it whenever people are like, "Oh, is it kind of like manga when it's read from right to left?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it's exactly like that." But I've never really thought about it because, again, I mean, the shows I grew up with
Hmm.
was a whole bunch of anime.
Yeah,
And I grew
yeah.
up with Bleach and Dragon Ball and Inuyasha, and you know, so to me, to me, it was always natural just to go in that direction. It was I never really, I never really saw the appeal for making an American comic or making like a
Yeah.
cartoony show.
I definitely need to bring you back and discuss more anime, more shows, because it is something that's popping now more than ever. A lot more people are getting into
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Hulu got a whole bunch of anime. HBO Max got a whole bunch of anime as well. And then Netflix does the
Yeah,
same.
and
So there's this culture thing now. People want more anime.
yeah, definitely. And you can see it also in the sales of physical media with the manga. And I mean, just for example, the series Demon Slayer, it
Hmm.
blew up in popularity last year, and it outsold the entire
It did, yeah.
American comic book industry, and it was making headlines, and you know, so people don't want to honestly see American comics anymore. They really want to. They're really interested and invested with manga and anime right now.
As someone who has read a lot of American comics, it feels you get to a point where it's just so repetitive, like repetitivo, repetitivo. Es la
Mm,
misma cosa y se repite otra vez. Once they finish that timeline, they restart the timeline again with different characters.
right.
Kind of like what DC did with New
The
52.
New 52,
Yeah,
and then they created. I think they created the New 52 and then the other two timelines within five
within
years,
five. Yeah,
like
which is
seven,
crazy.
5 years, which is
Yeah.
insane because, I mean, I heard that they were going good with the run after New 52,
Hmm.
and then for some reason they, revamped it again.
Yeah. It's so and that's what I'm saying. It's just like they have to restart the timeline to change
Mm,
a few things and then to make the stories a little different. But in the end, you're getting a lot of the same thing where manga or anime, they're going into other things that we've never talked about. Like
right,
like especially Death Note, like the whole concept of that show. You don't see that here
right.
as much. You don't see that concept, which is refreshing in a lot of ways.
It is. It is. It's really interesting to, you know, whenever a new anime becomes uber popular and it goes into the mainstream, it's really interesting to see that it's very unique most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, I would have never thought of that. And then, you go to your Cartoon Network show or your Nickelodeon show, and it's like, oh, you're just doing the same thing.
Yeah. So no, man, it's refreshing, and I think the work you're doing, it's very refreshing, and especially knowing someone, knowing your struggle, knowing how, you said, oh, it's taken me 3 years. Hey, man, 3 years for a reason because you're working hard on your craft, and I'm sure you're not gonna disappoint your fans when it
I
comes
hope
to
not.
providing a lot of good content, and I wish you well. I wish you good luck.
Yeah,
I wish you a
thank
lot of
you.
blessings so
Thank you
that
so much.
this can get published. And like I said, I promise you to in this here in the podcast we will expand. We will promote you. We will help you out with our audience so that you can get there and people can get it. Because I know a little bit of the story back 3 years ago. So
Yeah.
and I loved it when you came up with the idea and I told you, dude, that's awesome. So and I think now seeing some of the later drawings you've done and seeing a lot of the other stuff you talked about in the whole plot and everything, man, it's gonna hit. It's gonna go big, Johnny. So I wish you well, my friend. And before you go, before we end, I just want to hear your take on this because we both said we're Dragon Ball Z fans. Who is your favorite all-time Dragon Ball Z character and why? And who do you hate the most in Dragon Ball Z?
My favorite Dragon Ball Z character is Cell. Um, I don't know. It's just from his imperfect form to his semi-perfect form to his perfect form. I just love every part of it, and especially in the manga, Imperfect Cell, Toriyama inked in like every single dot, and that's probably why he hasn't come back. Is because they don't want to deal with that anymore. They've learned
Yeah.
their lesson. Um, and it's so funny because when by the time he gets to Perfect Cell in the manga, I'm guessing that they were just so over it that they don't even ink his dots anymore. They just leave them. They ink the border, but they don't ink inside.
And there's like they got lazy with it. Like no, they get the
Yeah.
picture.
Oh man, yeah. No, Cell is just my favorite character because for all intents and purposes, he was the final boss of Dragon Ball Z. Even though Toriyama didn't intend to finish it at the Cell arc,
Hmm.
there was never really any interviews that suggested that he was. It just felt so conclusive. That arc
Yeah.
felt so conclusive. It was the end of Gohan's story arc. It was the death of Goku again. And
Hmm.
spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen Dragon Ball, I mean, it's been out for
Spoiler.
35 years. So, so I don't really feel bad. Um,
It's like if
but
you hadn't
yeah,
seen Dragon Ball Z by now, you should have. So this is on
right.
you. This isn't on us.
Right.
Who's your least favorite character, or the character in Dragon Ball Z that you would say, I wish I
Uh,
had less of this character?
I mean, that's difficult to say because the characters I don't like already barely show up. So I'm kind of like okay with it. And I mean, I always say this, but I think Puar is the most useless character in fiction. He since he showed up around gosh, I'm not sure what chapter, but he showed up in the very first arc of Dragon Ball.
Hmm.
Ever since then, he's done nothing in the entire series to progress the plot. I mean, the only argument you can make is he turned into Goku. He turned
Hmm.
into a pair of scissors. Um, he helped Upa fight, and then that was it. But
Yeah.
that was like anyone could have done that.
So what about Yamcha? What do you feel, how do you feel about Yamcha?
I feel like he gets. I'm in the minority, which might become the majority soon, from what I'm seeing on
Hmm.
like Twitter and Reddit. But I think he is one of the best. I like Yamcha. I really do. I feel like he doesn't deserve a lot of the hate
I do
that he
too.
gets, and definitely Akira Toriyama. He completely just character assassinated him and turned him into like a sleaze, turned him into a cheater, and nobody likes that. So obviously, like no one's gonna like him after
And it's
that.
like, and he's always dying too. So,
Right, in the most humiliating ways. So I don't know. I think he's just a poor doll. He needs to get a break.
man, I really enjoyed this conversation and dive into your head and talk about your art, man. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you
it's been
coming
really
in.
fun.
I really appreciate you coming in and showing us some of your art.
Thank
And I
you. It
hope to
was
see,
it was a lot of fun.
next time I see your drawings, I want to see it in the manga. I want to hold it in my hands
Oh gosh.
and see it published
Okay.
because I know it's gonna go big, man. You have
Okay.
a great story. You have some good artwork, and I've always told you I'm a big art of how you draw. And dude, you're gonna make it, man. And here in the pod,
Thank
when
you
you
so
make it,
much.
just promise me one thing: when you make it and you make millions off this manga, you're gonna come back in the podcast and talk about it again.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'll be like, yo, let's do another one.
For sure, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you everybody for joining us for this conversation. And I wish you well, Johnny. Best of blessings and blessed blessings to all of you. Make sure you are nice and kind to everybody. Peace out, y'all.
Yes.